blows. All hardwood floors, you motherfuckers stay talking about some dancing. God, your blood wasn't used. Not say we're gonna waste it though, boo.
Online, great match. Best online. Here comes a new challenger.
Player one.
Fight. Round two. Fight. champion wins!
Player
Round
1.
1. Fight! Round 2. Fight! Final round. Fight! Akuma wins! Great match.
Now release that. Oh, hold up. Shit. You shoot me, now go shoot yourself. You shot me, now go shoot yourself. That's all. I shouldn't have to shoot yourself. I shouldn't have to shoot yourself for me. Just shoot yourself. I shouldn't have to shoot yourself for me. Now you can always help. What you mean? I just want to refer you first. I want to refer you first because I think I'm about to get one of those females to be the fuck. Remember? Big three, big super good. Fuck your girl. Fuck your chick. Fuck your kid her. Shit, what the fuck? Something else.
Casual match. Here comes a new challenger.
Player one.
Fight. Hadouken! 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 one. Fight. Hadouken! Round two. Fight. Shoryuken. Final round. Fight! Ryu wins!
Player
Round
one.
one. Fight! Round two. Fight! Ryu wins!
Player
Round
one.
one. Fight! Hadouken! Ryu wins! Here comes a new challenger.
Player one.
Fight! Round two. Fight! M. Bison wins!
Player
Round
one.
one. Fight! wins.
It involved them that cruelty felt like normal behavior to them, like breathing. Your pain became show to them. You were the main character in a twisted drama they directed from the shadows. They brought strings, planted doubts, twisted words, and watched you unravel, pretending to be innocent. But what they failed to realize is that every moment they spent mocking your downfall, God was watching. Not just watching, He was recording. They didn't know they were creating their own judgment day, scene by scene. They thought your pain was their victory. But it was actually the set for their downfall. You weren't just crying tears. Those tears were turning into spiritual gasoline. Every insult, every manipulation of your smile, with fuel and the fire they didn't even realize they were lighting. And now, that fire is out of control. But here's the kicker. It's not touching you. It's chasing you, burning through their peace, their full blessings, their illusion of control. They assume that nothing happened to them immediately, and they've got away with it. But heaven doesn't always respond in the moment. Sometimes God lets people dig their own graves just deep enough, so that when they're born in, now. And that's where they found them. In the grave they dug for you. They didn't just hang you, they angered God. And when God gets involved, there's no forgiveness, no chance, and repentance is given deep. But most of them won't repent, they're too proud, too blind, so now the fire they spark is here. And it's not symbolic, it's very real. And it's only just begun. Number two, your suffering was the legal evidence heaven needed. God doesn't move off emotion, He moves on truth. And while He was silently breaking down behind closed doors, something powerful was happening underway. Every time the light twisted your story, turned people against you, and manipulated in kindness, it was being documented, not by humans, but by heaven. What they didn't realize was that your suffering wasn't just pain, it was evidence. They thought because you weren't defending yourself, because you weren't backing back, because you weren't exposing, that you were powerless. But in reality, you gave God room to build a case they couldn't appeal. A spiritual fire was growing every day they chose to keep moving you instead of repenting. They thought you were weak for some fire, but heaven saw your strength. It takes more strength to stand still under pressure than to latch up in that way. And God rewards that kind of strength, not with comfort, but with justice. They had time to change, time to apologize, time to make it right. But instead they kept digging, kept provoking, kept laughing at what they didn't understand. What looked like a delay to you was actually divine strategy. God doesn't have that kind of impulse. He lets it all build and the truth is undeniable until their actions can't be spun, until their view reaches the point of no return. Then He moves. And when He moves, it's final. They thought they were getting away with it because life seemed to be blessing. Their name wasn't exposed, their lives were still believed, their reputation untouched. But God wasn't letting them. He was letting them accumulate debt, spiritual debt. And now that debt is due. They can't talk their way out of this one. They can't play the victim this time. They messed with someone heaven marked. Your pain became the very thing you're convicted of. And now, the very silence they took as weakness is the reason that judgment is so loud. They mess with the children and didn't fight back. Not because they couldn't, but because heaven said, stand still about this. And now God is moving. And when He moves, there's no more shot, just results. Number three. There was something first that you really wanted. You're not just a person they didn't understand. You were a captain of divine purpose, a living walking around in human form. When people have no care, they're not just hurting someone's feelings. They're defining something sacred. You hold spiritual weight. You carry an assignment that's bigger than looks, words, or status. So when they attacked you, it wasn't just personal. It was a spiritual violation. They didn't just cross a line, they crossed into holy territory. And now there are consequences they can't dodge. Every chosen one carries something that heaven defends. And when you're being mistreated, bullied, lied, and dragged emotionally and spiritually, you weren't just suffering. You were being recorded as a witness.
2 weeks after delivering this message, watch this court in the media. Is an activist insert the person
You weren't just suffering. You were being recorded as a witness. You were absorbing poison without throwing it back. You were letting yourself be crushed but refusing to turn it. You were taking hit after hit and still showing up with your heart intact. That level of spiritual endurance doesn't go unnoticed in the realm of the divine. It's a level of fire that lit to destroy you as reverse, not because you cursed them, not because you got revenge, but because God was glorious. And one of those is and violate sacred things and walk away blessed. They touch something owed and thinking it was ordinary. When people treat sacred things like common objects, God doesn't let it slide. There's a line where mercy ends and justice begins. And they lost it thinking they were just venting or collecting or teaching you a lesson. But heaven took notice. Now the very fire they meant to consume
Satan don't even get to go back that fucking heaven, dickhead, ever.
Peace. And they can't control it because they hit it with unclean hands.
Matter what your stupid ass thought.
They with spiritual fire thinking.
You're not nobody's fucking sheriff. Ain't no goddamn sheriff, dickhead. You don't override Michael, bitch, or Jesus.
Judges. You didn't fight back because you weren't supposed to. That silence they thought was weakness. You gave God full access. You didn't respond with love, but heaven responded with fire. And now, what they started in secret is ending full of you. And this time, no apology can put it out. Number 4, their attack was not personal. It was a declaration of war against the divine. They didn't hate you for who you were. They hated you for what you carried. Your presence confronted everything they heard. Your light made their hidden darkness uncomfortable. Your authenticity disrupted their lives. And instead of facing their own wounds, they made you the enemy. But what they failed to realize is that their attack on you wasn't just misdirected anger or jealousy. It was spiritual warfare aimed at the divine assignment on your life. You were the target. They were lashing out at the presence of God within you, and that's where they sealed their fate. They didn't realize that hurting you was equivalent to signing a declaration of war, not with a person, but with heaven itself. The moment they touched you with cruel intentions, they entered a battlefield they weren't qualified for. This wasn't a regular conflict. It was rebellion disguised as disrespect. Every chosen one carries a divine signature, a calling that activates the environment around them. People either rise when you walk into the room or try to drag you down because they can't match your frequency. Those who chose the second option weren't just disagreeing with you. They were challenging the God who called you. And God never loses a challenge. Ever. They felt threatened not because you did anything to them, but because your life was a mirror reflecting what they gave up on. Your worth reminded them of their stagnation. Your integrity reminded them of their compromise. Your favor reminded them of their disobedience. So they tried to crush it, discredit it, and distort it, because it was easier than facing the truth. But here's the twist. When they tried to destroy you, they activated your calling. Every word spoken against you backfired. Every scheme that was meant to block you actually built you. They thought they could fight you in the flesh, while ignoring the fact that heaven was backing you in the spirit. But now the backlash isn't coming from you. It's coming from the one they really offended. They didn't just come for a person, they came for a vessel. And when you come for a vessel God chose, you lose before the battle even begins. Because it's never been about who you are. It's always been about who sent you, and that's where they messed up. Number 5, God didn't intervene immediately because he was building a case that couldn't be dismissed. You cried, you prayed, you asked God why he was letting it happen, why he didn't step in when your name was being dragged, when your character was being assassinated. When people you loved turned into enemies overnight, you weren't just hurting, you were confused. You knew God saw it, so why didn't he stop it? What felt like delay wasn't neglect, it was precision. Heaven was watching, not passively, but strategically. Every lie told on you, every setup, every conversation behind your back was added to the case. Every moment you chose to stay silent instead of snapping. Every night you cried yourself to sleep without telling a soul. Every time you forgave and still got still. All of it was spiritual evidence. God wasn't just going to shut it down. He was going to prove who was who. He wasn't going to give them room to twist the narrative, because if he had responded too early, they would have played innocent. They would have lied their way into sympathy. But God waited until the evidence sank so high, It couldn't be ignored. He let them go too far on purpose, so when judgment hit, no one could say it was being unfair. And now, the case is closed, the verdict is sealed, and what's coming down isn't symbolic payback, it's real spiritual fire. A fire that doesn't just burn reputations but uproots comfort zones. It hits where it hurts. It strikes in places they thought were untouchable: money, health, influence, relationships. Because they built those things while tearing them down, and now they're finding out what it means to profit from injustice. This wasn't common. This was a court. And heaven doesn't hand out warnings once the verdict is in. You didn't have to lift a finger. Your obedience was your testimony. Your endurance was your closing argument. And now God is responding not out of pity, but out of righteousness. Because when a chosen one is falsely handled, the delay isn't denial. It's set up. It's the gathering of receipts. And when heaven pulls the trigger, there's no piping, no editing, no excuses. The fire has already started, not up there, but right where they thought they were safe. God is not punishing, He's correcting, and this time mercy set aside so justice could speak. Number 6, they didn't realize you were the test, not the target. They thought you were just another person to use, dismiss, or manipulate. To them, you were a convenience, a means to an end. Someone to lean on when things got hard, someone to blame when things went wrong. But right where when it's falsely handled, the delay isn't denial. It's set up. It's the gathering up. Because they built those things. The case, every moment you chose to stay silent instead of sending. Every night you cried yourself to sleep without telling a soul. Every time you forgave and still got still. All of it was spiritual evidence. God wasn't just going to shut it down. He was going to prove who was who. He wasn't going to give them room to twist the narrative, because if he had responded too early, they would have played innocent. They would have lied their way into sympathy. But God waited until the evidence sat so high it couldn't be ignored. He let them go too far on purpose, so when judgment hit, no one could say he was being unfair. And now, the case is closed, the verdict is sealed, and what's coming down isn't symbolic payback, it's real spiritual fire. A fire that doesn't just burn reputations but uproots comfort zones. It hits where it hurts. It strikes in places they thought were untouchable: money, health, influence, relationships. Because they built those things while tearing them down, and now they're finding out what it means to profit from injustice. This wasn't common. This was court. And heaven doesn't hand out warnings once the verdict is in. You didn't have to lift a finger. Your obedience was your testimony. Your endurance was your closing argument. And now God is responding not out of pity, but out of righteousness. Because when a chosen one is falsely handled, the delay isn't denial. It's set up. It's the gathering of receipts. And when heaven pulls the trigger, there's no hiding, no editing, no excuses. The fire has already started, not out there, but right where they thought they were safe. God is not punishing, He's correcting, and this time mercy set aside so justice could speak. Number 6, they didn't realize you were the test, not the target. They thought you were just another person to use, dismiss, or manipulate. To them, convenience, a means to an end. Someone to lean on when things got hard, someone to blame when things went wrong, someone to when they needed to feel superior. They misread your presence entirely. What they didn't know was that your arrival in their life wasn't random. It was divinely scheduled. You weren't there for decoration, you were there for evaluation. God placed you in their life as a test, not a test of knowledge, but of character. How they handled you was a direct reflection of their relationship with Him. Your kindness was a mirror, your patience was a gauge. Your loyalty was a challenge to their selfishness. And instead of rising to the moment they sank, they saw you as weak when you were actually strong. They saw you as naive when you were discerning. They thought they were in control of the narrative, realizing they were being watched, not by you, but by heaven. You were the Jonah in their storm, not because you caused the chaos, but because your presence revealed it. You were the Joseph, thrown in the pit by the very people who should have protected you. You were the Job, tested without cause and left alone to suffer in silence. And through it all, you stayed faithful. You didn't retaliate. You didn't plot revenge. You simply endured, even when it cost you everything. God wasn't watching for your complaints. He was watching for their repentance. But they never gave it. They justified their action. Even when you were discerning, they thought they were in control of the narrative, not realizing they were being watched, not by you, but by heaven. You were the Jonah in the storm, not because you caused the chaos, but because your presence revealed it. You were the Joseph, thrown in the pit by the very people who should have protected you. You were the Job, tested without cause and left alone to suffer in silence. And through it all, you stayed faithful. You
faithful for a man need not doing the gate.
didn't retaliate. You didn't plot revenge. You simply endured, even when it cost you everything. God wasn't watching for your complaints. He was watching for their repentance. But they never gave it. They justified their actions. They laughed off the pain. They assumed they were right just because they were righteous. It was not but their honest intentions invaded hearts, and their heart failed the test. Now God is responding, not because you cried out for revenge, but because they failed an exam they didn't even know they were taking. They treated the divine encounter like it was disposable. And that kind of error doesn't go unnoticed. When people mishandle the chosen one, the consequences are never just about the moment. It's about the message they sent to heaven. We don't value what you sent. And now the response isn't emotional, it's judicial. Number 7. Self-defense. Years of relationship. Of course. That's not getting down choice. And now the response isn't emotional, it's judicial. Number 7. The fire they lit wasn't against you, it was against their own future. They thought they were building a trap for you, but they were digging a pit for themselves in their bloodline. Every time they lied on your name, falsely accused you of manipulating your image or prayed against your progress, they weren't just affecting you. They were laying landmines in their own future. What they set in motion wasn't a temporary scheme. It was a curse they activated over their own life and worse, over generations connected to them. They didn't realize that when you target someone covered by God, the backlash doesn't stop with you. It spills over into your finances, your relationships, your children, your children's children. This isn't superstition, it's spiritual law. When they try to delay your destiny by tying you down the spiritual ropes, slander, envy, word curses, they didn't trap you. Those same ropes loop back around and are now tightening around everything they care about. They didn't just sabotage their now, they compromised their later. You were never stuck. You were being prepared. But they tied themselves to a fire they thought they could control. A fire that's now burning through their peace, their stability, and their legacy. Because this fire doesn't need your hands to grow. It feeds on injustice. And the more they try to justify what they did, the hotter it gets. God doesn't play when it comes to the people he assigns to carry legacy. Your life is connected to impact, to healing, to restoration. So when they attacked you, they didn't just mess with an individual, they messed with a divine timeline. And now the system they thought they built on deception is collapsing, and they can't outrun it. They tried to destroy your future out of jealousy, but they ended up setting fire to their own.
There you go.
That exploit wasn't just petty, it was prophetic, because it exploded what was really inside them. And now heaven has responded. And it's not just correction, it's cleansing. Because some fires don't come to harm, they come to purify the land of wickedness. And now everything they touched with unclean motives is unclean.
So burn your got them motherfucking pile of money, ain't got them over. I get the goddamn slide down money. What you need?
Not because you cursed them, but because the fire they sparked is too wild, too divine, and too exact to be anything but judgment. Number 8. Your tears were liquid prayers that touched realms they can't access. They thought your tears were a sign that they were winning. They saw your breakdowns, your silence, your emotional exhaustion, and believed they had the upper hand. They mocked what they didn't understand. But what they didn't know is that your tears weren't just emotional reactions, they were spiritual codes. Every time you wept, every time you collapsed into prayer with nothing but pain in your chest, you were releasing messages into the spirit realm that bypassed human ears and went straight to the throne of God. You were activating realms they had no access to. Your tears were not begging. They were commanding. They were sounding alarms in the spirit, alerting heaven to the level of injustice being committed against you. People didn't know your friends and all this but God heard. And when he hears those kinds of cries, not shallow performative cries, but soul-level weeping, He does not sit still. They laughed. They mocked. They told people you were crazy. They whispered that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic. All the while your tears were building a snowball, brick by brick. You didn't know it at the time, but every sleepless night, every moment you wept with no one to call, every emotional collapse, they were sacred. They were divine alerts sent straight into the courts of heaven. Now the response is here, and it's not soft, it's not gentle, it's not even warm, it's explosive. The kind of fire that doesn't knock first. The kind of judgment that moves in suddenly and shakes everything out of alignment. They thought your pain was powerless, that it's summoned a force they can't negotiate with, a force that doesn't speak their language, a force they can't manipulate or escape. Because you weren't praying for revenge, you were crying for justice. And justice is never quiet forever. It comes in storms, it comes in divine fire, and it comes without apology. They ask for a reaction. What they got was a response from the highest authority, not from you, but from the realm they mocked, the God they defied, and the tears they underestimated. Now, the night God gave them repeated chances to stop, they chose to escalate. They weren't blind, they weren't unaware. Deep down, they knew what they were doing was wrong. But instead of repenting, they kept going. They didn't just let them chances, really. They served unexpected delays, conditions that made their son warning people they didn't expect, dreams that shook them in the middle of the night. But every time they made the same choice, to ignore it, to push forward in pride, to double down on destruction. This wasn't just evil, it was rebellion. Rebellion is different from weakness. Weakness might fall into sin, feel the guilt, and try to make it right. Rebellion knows it's wrong and still says, I'm doing it anyway. And that's exactly what they did. They saw your kindness, they saw your silence. They saw what God was showing them through your patience. And they mistook it for permission. Instead of changing, they took advantage. They chose escalation over transformation. And that's where everything turned. God's grace isn't infinite when it's being spit on. There's a line, and they crossed it. Not once, but repeatedly. They were given space to repent, and they used that space to dig a hole deeper. Now it's no longer a matter of maybe they didn't know better. No, they knew. And that knowledge is exactly what's fueling the collapse. Because heaven doesn't just judge actions, it judges intentions. And their intention wasn't just to hurt you. It was to test how much they could get away with while still wearing a mask of righteousness. They have used grace until it ran. And now they're dealing with the reality of a decree that can't be undone. You never had to curse them. God was giving them time. But they wasted it. And when God shuts the door, it's not emotional, it's final. The fallout they're experiencing is not your revenge, it's divine response. Not from a place of hate, but from a place of balance. Justice always catches up with rebellion. Always. They weren't pushed into this. They chose it repeatedly. And now the collapse isn't just deserved, it's unavoidable. Number 10. Your spiritual DNA activated judgment timeless. You're not built like everyone else. That's the part they miss. Your presence isn't casual. It's covenant. When you walk into someone's life, heaven knocks. There are divine terms tied to your soul. And when people cross the boundaries of this treatment with you, it doesn't just hurt your heart, it triggers systems. You're not just emotionally wired, you're spiritually timed. There's a hidden threshold built into your spiritual design, something heaven placed inside you that acts like a divine. When you're pushed past a certain point of betrayal, injustice, or abuse, that threshold activates the countdown. It doesn't matter how forgiving you are, it doesn't matter if you still pray for them. Once it reaches that spiritual tipping point, judgment begins to unfold. Not because you're vengeful, but because the weight of your calling cannot tolerate prolonged dishonor. People thought they had time. They thought your silence meant unlimited chances. They mistook your endurance for the mission. But what they didn't see was the spiritual timer counting down in the background. Because every chosen one has one. It's not visible to the eye, but it's written in the fabric of your assignment. And when they keep crossing lines, even after grace has been extended, that time goes off. And once it does, there's no going back. They were so confident in their control, so convinced that their mercy was really. They were sitting on a ticking bomb, pretending it was a throne. Now it's exploding in slow motion. Opportunities are drying up, influences collapsing, pieces being shattered. And they don't even know where it started, but you do. Because you felt it shift. You felt when the atmosphere changed, when the burden you carried lifted, not because things got better, but because judgment stepped in. And this isn't the kind of thing prayer circles can reverse. This isn't let's just move on territory. Once the time hits zero, unless God himself steps in and grants supernatural mercy, the process begins. And it doesn't stop until justice is complete. You were never just someone they hurt. You were a divine checkpoint, a test they failed, a living reminder that grace isn't unlimited and time is always on their side. Number 11. The same people who mock your pain will soon beg for your intercession. They laugh while you cry. They roll their eyes, whisper behind your back, and make you the punchline in rooms you didn't even know you were being discussed in. You were the too emotional one, the overthinker, the one who needed to toughen up. They hold your pain dramatic, your boundaries disrespectful, and your loyalty desperate. But now that the fire has started to fall, not from you, but from God, they're remembering every word they spoke. And suddenly, the dramatic one looks like the only one who can reach heaven. The same mouths that mocked you will start to stutter, not because you changed, but because now the judgment they never believed in is touching their lives in places that matter. Their finances. They mistook your endurance for the... Number 10, your spiritual DNA activated judgment timeless. You're not built like everyone else. That's the right there is. Your presence is in you. When you walk into someone's life, heaven knocks. There are divine terms tied to your soul. And when people cross the boundaries of mistreatment with you, it doesn't just hurt your heart, it triggers systems. You're not just nurturing your spiritual. There's a hidden threshold built into your spiritual design. Something heaven placed inside you that acts like a divine blood. Injustice or abuse, that threshold activates counterfeit. It doesn't matter how forgiving you are. It doesn't matter if you still pray for them.
Go against that fucking Bible and see what the fuck will happen, stupid ass.
Unfold. Not because you're vengeful, but because the weight of your calling cannot tolerate prolonged dishonor. People thought they had time. They thought your silence meant unlimited chances. They mistook your endurance for the mission. But what they didn't see was the spiritual timer counting down in the background, because every chosen one has one. It's not visible to the eye, but it's written in the fabric of your assignment. And when they keep crossing lines, even after grace has been extended, that timer goes off. And once it does, there's no going back. They were so confident in their control, so convinced of their mercy that really they were sitting on a ticking bomb, pretending it was a throne. Now it's exploding in slow motion. Opportunities are drying up, influences collapsing, peace is being shattered. And they don't even know where it started, but you do. Because you felt it shift. You felt when the atmosphere changed. When the burden you carried lifted, not because things got better, but because judgment stepped in. And this isn't the kind of thing prayer circles can reverse. This isn't let's just move on territory. Once the time hits zero, unless God himself steps in and grants supernatural mercy, the process begins. And it doesn't stop until justice is complete. You were never just someone they hurt. You were a divine checkpoint, a test they failed, a living reminder that grace isn't unlimited and time isn't always on their side. Number 11. The same people who mocked your pain will soon beg for your intercession. They laughed while you cried. They roll their eyes at your breakdowns, whisper behind your back. Hanging in your chest, you were releasing messages into the spirit realm that bypassed fears and went straight to the throne of God. You weren't falling apart. You were activating realms they had no access to. Your tears were not begging. They were commanding, they were sounding alarms in the spirit, alerting heaven to the level of injustice being committed against you. People even friends overlooked it, family dismissed it, but God heard. And when he hears those kinds of cries, not shallow performative cries, but soul level weeping, he does not sit still. They laughed, they mocked, they told people you were crazy. They whispered that you were too sensitive, too emotional, or too dramatic. All the while your tears were building a spiritual case brick by brick. You didn't know it at the time, but every sleepless night, every moment you wept with no one to call, every emotional collapse, they were sacred. They were divine alerts sent straight into the courts of heaven. Now the response is here. And it's not soft, it's not gentle, it's not even warm, it's explosive. The kind of fire that doesn't knock first. the kind of judgment that moves in suddenly and shakes everything out of alignment. They thought your pain was powerless, but it's summoned a force they can't negotiate with, a force that doesn't speak their language, a force they can't manipulate or escape. Because you weren't praying for revenge, you were crying for justice. And justice is never quiet forever. It comes in storms, it comes in divine fire, and it comes without apology. They ask for a reaction. What they got was a response from the highest authority, not from you, but from the Roman they mocked, the God they defied, and the tears they underestimated.
But you start with one of the letters and put it on the screen. It says, don't ignore this video because the universe has a message for you. What is it that you today?
And God gave them repeated chances to stop. They chose to escalate. They weren't blind. They weren't unaware. Deep down, they knew what they were doing was wrong. But instead of repenting, they kept going. God didn't just let them run. He gave them chances, real ones, quiet nudges, disturbed sleep, unexpected delays, convictions that made their stomach turn, warnings from people they didn't expect, dreams that shook them in the middle of the night. But every time they made the same choice, to ignore it, to push forward in pride, to double down on destruction. This wasn't just evil, it was rebellion. Rebellion is different from weakness. Weakness might fall into sin, feel the guilt, and try to make it right. Rebellion knows it's wrong and still says, I'm doing it anyway. And that's exactly what they did with you. They saw your kindness, they saw your silence, they saw the grace God was showing them through your patience. And they mistook it for permission. Instead of changing, they took advantage. They chose escalation over transformation. And that's where everything turned. God's grace isn't infinite when it's being spit on. There's a line, and they crossed it. Not once, but repeatedly. They were given space to repent, and they used that space to take over.
That's what I tell you that. I told you no, and you do it anyway. That's right.
That knowledge is exactly what's fueling the collapse. Because heaven doesn't just judge actions, it judges intentions. And their intention wasn't just to hurt you. It was to test how much they could get away with by slavery and righteousness. They refused grace and did it randomly. And now they're dealing with the reality of a decree that can't be undone. You never had to curse them. God was giving them time. But they wasted it. And when God shuts the door, it's not emotion, it's final. The fall that they're experiencing is not a revenge, it's divine response. Not from a place of hate, but from a place of balance. Justice always catches up with rebellion. Always. They weren't pushed into this. They chose it repeatedly. And now the collapse isn't just deserved, it's unavoidable. Number 10. Your spiritual DNA activated judgment timeless. You're not built like everyone else. That's the part they miss. Your presence isn't casual. It's covenant. When you walk into someone's life, heaven marks it. There are divine terms tied to your soul. And when people cross the boundaries of extreme with you, it doesn't just hurt your heart, it triggers systems. You're not just emotionally wired, you're spiritually timed. There's a hidden threshold built into your spiritual design, something heaven placed inside you that acts like a divine law. When you're pushed past a certain point of betrayal, injustice, or abuse, that threshold activates a countdown. It doesn't matter how forgiving you are, it doesn't matter if you still pray for them. Once it reaches that spiritual tipping point, judgment begins to unfold. Not because you're vengeful, but because the weight of your calling cannot tolerate prolonged dishonor. People thought they had time. They thought your silence meant unlimited chances. They mistook your endurance for permission. But what they didn't see was the spiritual timer counting down in the background, because every chosen one has one. It's not visible to the eye, but it's written in the fabric of your assignment. And when the key crossing lines, even after grace has been extended, that timer goes off. And once it does, there's no going back. They were so confident in their control, so convinced you were at their mercy, that really they were sitting on a ticking bomb, pretending it was a throne. Now it's exploding in slow motion. Opportunities are drying up, influences collapsing, peace is being shattered, and they don't even know where it started, but you do. Because you felt it shift. You felt when the atmosphere changed. When the burden you carried lifted, not because things got better, but because judgment stepped in. And this isn't the kind of thing prayer circles can reverse. This isn't let's just move on territory. Once the time hits zero, unless God himself steps in and grants supernatural mercy, the process begins. And it doesn't stop until justice is complete. You were never just someone they hurt. You were a divine checkpoint, a test they failed, a living reminder that grace isn't unlimited and time is always on their side. Number 11. The same people who mock your pain will soon beg for your intercession. They laughed while you cried. They rolled their eyes at your breakdowns, whispered behind your back, and made you the punchline in rooms you didn't even know you were being discussed in. You were the too emotional one, the overthinker, the one who needed to toughen up. They called your pain dramatic, your boundaries disrespectful, and your loyalty desperate. But now that the fire has started to fall, not from you, but from God, they're remembering every word they spoke. And suddenly, the dramatic one looks like the only one who can reach heaven. The same mouths that mocked you will start to stutter, not because you changed, but because now the judgment they never believed in is touching their lives in places that matter. Their finances will start drying up. Their relationships will fall into confusion. Their influence will begin to rot from the inside out. They'll start to feel that same isolation they put you through, and it won't make sense to them because they still think it's a coincidence. But deep down, they'll know God is responding. And the one they violated spiritually was never just a person. They were a vault of favor and protection they broke open and wasted. And now, when they come running back, desperate, broken, hoping for your prayers, hoping for your intercession, they'll find something they never accepted. You're not available, not because you hate them, not because you're bitter, but because your assignment has expired. When judgment arrives, it closes doors, it severs ties, it removes access. You didn't walk away, they got removed from your story. There's a difference. When they had your presence, they mishandled it. When they had your prayers, they took them for granted. Now that the weight of their actions has returned home, they want to lean on you spiritually like nothing ever happened. But God won't allow it, because this isn't a season of mercy through you. It's a season of consequence without you. And when they find themselves locked out of your life, they'll finally understand what they were really dealing with. Not someone weak, not someone dramatic, but someone chosen. And they mocked their miracle until it disappeared. Number 12, they wanted you powerless so they could play God. They didn't just want to hurt you, they wanted to control you. That's the part most people miss. Their behavior wasn't random, and it wasn't just about jealousy. It was about doing it. They needed you to doubt yourself, question your worth, shrink in the presence of their ego, because the more broken you felt, the more powerful they seemed. It wasn't enough for them to win. They needed you to lose your voice, your confidence, and your sense of direction, so they could position themselves as the authority in your life. They weren't trying to love you, they were trying to replace God. Every insult wasn't just it was calculated. Every guilt trip, every backhanded compliment, every emotional withdrawal was designed to bring you to a place where they could rescue you. Only after they created the storm. They wanted to be the voice you depended on, the opinion you feared, the validation you lived for, and when you started seeing through it, that's when the real attacks began. Because your independence was a threat to the little throne they built on your insecurity. They wanted worship in subtle ways. You praising their wisdom, their image, their decisions. You apologizing just for existing. You playing small so they could feel big. And while others clapped for their charisma and charm, God was watching the manipulation behind the curtain. And here's the thing about God. He does not share his throne. What they were doing wasn't just abusive. It was spiritual treason. They tried to take a seat only God had in your life. And now the exposure is happening publicly. Slowly but surely, the very people they turned against you are starting to see it. The mask is slipping, the charm is cracking, and their influence is crumbling. Not by your hand, but by divine disarmament. They're being dethroned, spiritually stripped, not just embarrassed, but revealed. And there's no PR statement that can undo what God is doing, because when someone tries to play God in your life, they don't just lose your respect, they lose his protection. Now their manipulation has turned into isolation. The crown they stole has turned into chains. And the people they rallied against you, they're watching it all fall apart, wondering how they ever missed the signs. Number 13, the fire now answering their mission from you is from the same God they provoked. You didn't throw a single punch, you didn't cast a spell, you didn't smear their name, expose their secrets, or even defend yourself the way you had to. What you did was far more dangerous to their kingdom of lies. You survived. And that survival, soaked in humility, silence, and sacred pain, became a spiritual alarm that reached the throne of God. Now the fire falling on isn't from your rage. It's from the same God they mocked, provoked, and tested without fear. They'll cry witchcraft. They'll say you're the one doing harm because their world is falling apart. They'll throw scriptures, act confused, play victim. But the heavens are not fooled. You're not the source of the fire. You were the warning before it came. God is not a spectator in your suffering. He is a witness. And when the line of unrepentant cruelty is crossed, heaven doesn't stay silent. The response isn't revenge. It's rectification. This fire isn't emotional. It's judicial. It's not personal payback. It's divine justice. You didn't have to curse them. Your pain did. You didn't have to plot. They kept provoking. And now the response is not a flame you lit, but a fire they drew with their own actions. They danced on your wounds. They laughed when they thought you were finished. But God was collecting it all, every smirk, every betrayal, every act of sabotage, and storing it like evidence in a sealed courtroom. And when God moves, he doesn't just settle scores, he reorders everything. They thought your silence was weakness, but that silence was holy. It was restraint. It was trust in a God who never misses. And now, that same silence is roaring in their lives louder than any scream ever could. What's burning down isn't the result of bitterness, it's the consequence of unchecked wickedness. And not even their fake apologies, church attendance, or last-minute repentance can stop it. Because this isn't about your feelings anymore. This is about divine order being restored. God's not just protecting you, he's clearing the battlefield. And if they still think it's you lighting the match, they've misunderstood everything. The fire they're running from is holy. The judgment they feel is personal, is prophetic. And there's no hiding from a God they dare to challenge through the one he chose. And number 14. They thought they destroyed you, but you were the seed, not the tombstone. They were so sure they had ended you. So sure that the smear campaign, silent treatments, manipulation, and psychological warfare had finished the job. They watched you walk away with tears in your eyes and mistook it for defeat. But what they never understood is that the chosen one doesn't die in pain. They resurrect in purpose. They weren't burying you in a tomb. They were planting you in destiny. The betrayal didn't break you, it activated you. The isolation didn't silence you, it recalibrated you. Every lie they told became spiritual fertilizer. Every night you cried alone became sacred soil. And while they were busy celebrating your burial, the roots were quietly growing beneath the surface. You weren't gone, you were going deeper. They thought they destroyed you because they couldn't see your process. That's how it works with seeds. Nothing looks like it's happening until everything starts breaking through. And now here you are, rising, blooming, becoming unstoppable. They thought they'd see a grave. What they're seeing is glory. Here's the twist they didn't expect. The fire they tried to burn you with, God took it and turned it into light. The same flame they used to shame you is now the one heaven uses to spotlight you. You were never the victim. You were the strategy. The enemy thought it was over, but he owned a seed that never dies. Your voice is louder now. Your energy is stronger. Your mind is clearer. And the most ironic part, their own actions watered your purpose. Every time they tried to curse you, they unknowingly spoke power into your next level, and the same people who threw dirt on your neck, stunned by the fruit growing from your life. They didn't bury a failure, they planted a legend. You didn't just survive, you expanded, and while they scrambled to make sense of it, you're walking into rooms they tried to lock, taking positions they swore you'd never qualify for, living a life that exposes their lives without you saying a single word. They thought they had marked your ending. But heaven had just begun your beginning, because chosen ones don't get buried, they get rooted. And from there, the rise is not just inevitable, it's explosive. What they meant for your destruction has become divine construction. Every tear, every betrayal, every silent breakdown, they all became the scaffolding for your rise. You weren't a victim of cruelty, you were a vessel of prophecy. And now, every stone they threw has become part of the foundation God is building beneath your feet. They tortured you, but God took notes. They mocked you, but heaven recorded the footage. And now, justice is not just coming, it's already here, burning down illusions, exposing corruption, and elevating the very one they tried to erase. This wasn't just calm. It was courtroom-level judgment. divine, undeniable, irreversible. You're not just rising, you're glowing with a fire they can't extinguish. You didn't retaliate with vengeance, you let God respond with verdicts. You were the test they failed, the seed they misjudged, the spiritual DNA they triggered without understanding what was encoded inside of you. Let them talk, let them spin their lives, it no longer matters. Because the tables haven't just turned, they've flipped with fire. And in this new chapter, you're not trying to be understood. You're walking in power, not from ego, but from elevation, not from revenge, but from restoration. You were never their victim. You were God's weapon in disguise. And now, that disguise has been removed. Let them feel the flames. Because what they lit in ignorance, heaven is now using with precision. Your survival wasn't the end of the story. It was the spark that ignited divine reckoning. The fire is here, but it's not consuming you. It's crowning you. If this message hit deep, if you felt seen, understood, and awakened, don't leave without showing some love. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a word that speaks directly to your spirit. Like this video if you know you're walking out of the fire stronger than ever. Comment below. Let us know what resonated with you most. Your voice matters here. Share this with someone who's been fighting silent battles, someone who needs to know they weren't crazy, they were chosen. This isn't just content. This is confirmation. And the world needs more of it. Let's wake up the warriors. Let's spread the fire. Stay powerful, stay protected. And I'll see you in the next one. God bless you. Couldn't the anointed ones, the moment you start reacting, manipulators start malfunctioning. Let that sit. Because in every room where a manipulator once reigned, your silence didn't just disturb the air, it shattered the illusion. They're not just irritated, they're not just mad. They are keen because you become their worst nightmare. A person who sees through and won't play the game. See, here's the wild part. According to psychological studies, manipulators rely on three key things: your confusion, your guilt, and your need for approval. Take those away. You just unplug their entire operating system. And you've chosen one, you're not just unplugged. You rip the wires out and smile, doing it. You didn't fall for the love one. You didn't get baited into guilt. And when they wouldn't gaslight you into submission, they short-circuited. Now they're pacing, sulking, lying to themselves, and everyone will listen because the one person they couldn't manipulate. It's the one soul they underestimated the most. You. So loud enough. Because in this video, we're exposing why you're so oppressed, so petty, and so powerless in your presence. By the end, you won't just understand the game, they'll wish they never tried to play it with you in the first place. And then, if they're watching this too, tell them to grab a fan, because the need is real, and you lit the fire. Number one, you refuse to be confused, so they can't control the narrative. They can't stand you, because you refuse to be confused. And confusion is the foundation of their control. That's what most people don't realize. Manipulators don't actually have power. What they have is distraction, distortion, and just enough smoke to make you question your own clarity. You came with spiritual vision. You see things for what they are, not what they're pretending. And that alone destroys the entire game. They used to get away with it because most people are too emotionally entangled to spot what's really going on. Most are too afraid to go deeper, too scared to call it what it is. But you looked it straight in the face and said, I see you. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than being seen without their costume. They wanted to lead you to drama, arguments, guilt, and games. But you stayed still. You asked questions, you noticed contradictions, you trusted your gut with their tone. And every time you did that, you were in the room with their place. Because their power isn't in force. It's in misdirection. The more distracted you are, the easier you are to move. But you didn't follow the noise. You stayed focused on the truth. That's why they needed. You didn't get lost in their storm. You watched the clouds form and said, I'll bring an umbrella. You didn't get pulled into the role they cast for you. You rewrote the script in real time. And once you see it clearly, they lose access to your mind, your emotions, and your peace. That's what makes you dangerous. You no longer have to make sense of the situation. You've stopped outsourcing your clarity. Now you move on facts, not feelings. You ask real questions. You catch subtle contradictions. You notice when someone's words and energy don't match. That level of awareness makes you immune, and that immunity makes them furious. They can't operate in clarity. They depend on form. But you turn on the light, and once the light's on, the roach is scattered. That's what this is. You become the light they can't manipulate, and the mirror they can't dodge. And now the tactics don't just fail, they expose them. Number two, your emotional discipline blocks their entry points. Manipulators hate emotionally disciplined people because it strips them of their favorite weapon, emotional chaos. They need you to overreact. They need you to panic, to snap, to cry, to defend themselves uncontrollably. That's where they do their best work. You're too emotionally shaken to think straight. But when you stay grounded, when you feel everything without acting on impulse, you leave them stuck with no ending point. And that drives them absolutely mad. They count on triggering you. They drop little insults masked as jokes. They twist your words, play the victim, give you the silent treatment, or suddenly explode, or just to provoke a reaction. But when you don't respond the way they expect, it throws them off completely. You're not shutting down, you're simply not handling emotional keys. They provoke and prod, waiting for you to break down. But you keep showing them that your peace is not up for negotiation. What they don't understand is that emotional discipline doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've matured to a level where you no longer let people control you through your feelings. You can feel anger without acting reckless. You can feel sadness without begging for connection. You can feel confused and still choose patience. That inner stability makes you open that can't climb. And that wall blocks their access to control. They can't stand that you don't feed their fire, because every manipulator needs energy. If they can't use yours, they run out. That's why they used to thrive in your reactions, your panic, your tears, your arguments. But now, they're looking at a version of you they can't, a version that observes, processes, and stays centered. And that version is a problem they don't know how to solve. They'll accuse you of being cold. They'll say you're detached or unbothered. But what's really happening is you're somehow being emotionally hijacked. You're taking your power back by choosing your responses carefully. And when you're no longer reacting, you become a mirror that shows them who they are without the distraction of your trauma. That's the real reason they're so triggered, because your discipline forces them to face their own lack of control. Number three, you don't see belonging where you're being controlled. Manipulators lose their grip on you the moment you stop needing to belong in places that require your silence, your shrinking, or your self-betrayal. That's the part they never expected. They thought your desire to be accepted would override your ability to see the truth. But you walked away. You didn't need the title, the approval, or the fake peace. You chose your soul with their system. And that's when the frustration turned into obsession. Most people stay stuck because they want to go on so badly. They'll tolerate mistreatment, play along with lies, and even gaslight themselves just to stay in the but not you. You woke up to the fact that any place where your power has to be dimmed isn't a safe space. It's a trap. And the moment you stop begging for seats at tables built on control, the game shifted. They can't manipulate someone that's nothing to prove. That's your power. You don't need their validation to feel real. You don't need the applause to know your value. And when they realize you couldn't trade your truth for inclusion, they haven't. Because inclusion is how they get others in check. They offer acceptance like a prize, and most fall for it. But you were willing to walk away, even if it meant being misunderstood, talked about nicely. You know something most don't. Being excluded by manipulators is a spiritual illusion. It means you're no longer under their spell. It means that approval no longer intoxicates you, and that independence makes you deeply threatening. They can't pull your strings if you don't care about their stage. They can't buy your silence if you're not impressed by their spot. They wanted you to feel like the outcast, but deep down, they know you're not free. You didn't lose access to look at it. You escaped your cage. And now that you're not sitting at their table, you can finally see how much poison is on the menu. That kind of clarity can't be undone. And that's what really eats them up. You're not desperate to be chosen by the crowd anymore, because you've already been chosen by something far bigger. And what you taste is being alignment. Manipulation just tastes cheap. Number 4, they can't exploit you because you've seen them happen before the play. They can't stand you because you know what the damage is done in the corner of the game. You catch it at the source. You've lived through enough cycles to know how the script goes. You've seen the build up, the blow up, and the bloodshed. And now, you don't need to wait for the fire and burn everything down before realizing someone was holding a match. You already smelled the smoke, checked the lighter in their pocket, and walked out before the show even started. That makes you unpredictable. As manipulators, unpredictability is terrifying. They can't exploit you because you don't operate from naivety. You want to take chances, you shoot red flags, you over-explain, so but not that. Now, you don't just respond to their behavior, you decode it. You have to react to the points of their tendency to fail. You watch the habit, feel the shifts, you catch the super change before the performance begins. They didn't get to finish the first act before you've already closed the curtain. That's what eats them. You're supposed to fall for it like everyone else. You're supposed to play your part. Maybe the forgiven one, maybe the overgiven, maybe the cynical. But you stop playing roles in other people's manipulative productions. You don't need to see how it plays out because you already know how it is. And it's always you picking up the pieces while they're doing it. Not this time. You've trained your intuition like a button. One energy shift, one odd phrase, one little inconsistency, and you're already 3 steps ahead. They think you're being clever, but you've already knocked out the exit. Not because you're dumb, but because you're prepared. You've seen enough games to recognize the field, and now you walk in with full awareness and zero tolerance. They hate that they can't surprise you, because manipulation is all about catching you off guard, but you don't live in denial. You live in discernment. And when manipulating someone who can predict their next move before they can pick it, the game doesn't just fall apart. It exposes what they've been the whole time. Number 5, your integrity isn't negotiable, and it kills their advantage. Manipulators can't stand people who have non-negotiable integrity because it makes all the negotiable tactics useless. They're used to buying people with praise, access, favors, opportunity to feed. They think everyone wants something bad enough to beg. But you've shattered that assumption. You're not playing the game for attention, clout, money, or even revenge. You're entering something they can't fake. Instance. And when they realize your values aren't for sale, their entire strategy implodes. They want leverage, some clerks pull them, get out of line. That's why they dangle things: inclusion, protection, false loyalty, shared secrets. But none of them knows you. You've already decided who you are and what you stand for, and it won't unpressure with promising talking about it. That's terrifying feeling of someone who is under control. They can't guilt you, they can't flatter you, they can't tempt you. You're simply not up for negotiation. What they don't understand is that your integrity wasn't born in peace. It was built through fire. You've been through enough to know that it never brings peace. You've done it before. You've played along. You've kept it quiet. You said yes when everything in your spirit screamed no. And the pain that followed taught you something priceless. Your integrity is your protection. Once you learned that, you stopped folding. And now, you'd rather lose the deal than lose your soul. That's what really enrages them. Because manipulators only know about creating gray areas where lines can be blurred and people can be persuaded. But you walk in with clear boundaries. Clear conscience. And that's how you lost every manipulative word they know how to use. They call you difficult. They call you sir. They say you're too rigid or too rough. But what they say is, I can't move you and I moved others. That's what they measure. Because they can't control their tongues. At the end of the day, they find what you say. They're angry that you rented, and that unshakable commitment to your truth. That's power they'll never be able to imitate, that will defeat. Number 6, you know the power of saying no without explaining yourself. Manipulators hate it when you say no, and don't offer them a door. You used to over-explain, didn't you? You try to be polite, you soften the blow. You give reasons, justifications, disclaimers, all in the hope that they understand, or at least respect your choice. But what you didn't realize then was that every word you gave them was king for their image. And I explained, the more they twisted, the more they justified, the more they brought. You were ending with emotionally give the truth, and they knew exactly how to use it. But you changed. Now your no stands on its own. No snitching, no panic, no sugarcoating. Just around you clean and clear. And that's exactly why they're furious. Because when you don't know what to do with the boundary they can't argue with, they want to open a crack, a sentence to spin, or even suppress into, or single calm conviction. There's nothing for them to push against. You've given them no kind. That's strange, of course. It's not being cool. It's not being clear. You've learned that your peace is more important than being liked. That your emotional energy is too precious to waste on explaining things to people who never planned to understand you in the first place. You've realized that people who truly respect you don't need 10 reasons to accept your boundary. And people who don't respect you will never find reasons good enough anyway. That's what kills their control. They can't get under your skin anymore because you stopped inviting them. You stopped negotiating, you stopped performing for approval. Your detachment is not distance, it's protection. It's you reclaiming the emotional space that you should treat like play. So now when they try to guilt you, shame you, or provoke you into explaining yourself, they're going to be stillness. No need to defend. And in that stillness, they finally feel what they used to. Powerlessness. Not because you screamed, not because you slammed the door, but because your silence wasn't weakness. It was final. And that finality, it ends the game before it even begins. Number 7. They're used to leading blindfolds you see with energy. They're used to people following based on image, status, or carefully staged performances. They don't have to apply the cue, critical elements, sing the right surgical lingo, or play the role to get something in control. And it usually works, because most people only work on the surface. But you don't. You develop your kind of sight that sticks. You don't look just your eyes. You get the things. You don't just hear what they say, you feel what they're not saying. That kind of perception can be fun, and it makes you unhappy. They thrive in crowds when people are too asleep to question, too nice to chat, or too broken to resist. They build their power when people crave approval, easily swayed by surface level charm. That's their audience. But you can have their audience. I'm lost him, and instantly sees what others are still clapping for. You don't need someone to bring character for you. You probably felt the inconsistency of what they were. You didn't need evidence. They would expose the segment of energy showed up. That's why they avoid you or obsess over you. You break their illusion just by being present. Because your discernment isn't based on single influence or single intent way. You're not appearance. You recognize patterns. You spot energy shares. And most importantly, you're not afraid to call it out. You don't chase people just because they're loud or emotionally messy. You don't follow people just because they claim to be. If the energy doesn't feel clean, if the bookings don't align, if the words and actions don't match, no matter who they are, no matter what they do. That kind of clarity terrifies me because it means you have to prove flat or emotionally flat. In other words, figures or blind followers, but you've got individual, you're vibrant, and in a room full of people under a spell, the one who sees clearly becomes a threat. That's why they fear. You're not under the illusion. They are. Number 8. You can't be flattered into submission. Manipulators don't always start with insults or aggression. Something undressing graves, they leave the charm, compliments, exaggerated information, all sugar, no substance. If somebody loved respect, be a straight. They learn that people live for a little validation, so they pile on sweet, you drop your it will save you. Because you would starve for attention, you were waiting to be seen. You've already knew. And that made you to the flat. They thought they could win it by making you think special. They thought some praise would make you fly. That a few nice words would make you more obedient. Maybe in the end, but you didn't melt. You didn't bite. You saw through it. Because real confidence doesn't feed on applause. It flows from alignment. And you weren't fooled by a shallow compliment when you could sense the hidden agenda. What they didn't realize is that they're not new to this. You've seen people pretend to lie, only to flip when they couldn't control. You've seen how fake sport turns into subtle sabotage the moment you say no. So now, you don't take praise at face value. You listen to the tone, the time, the intention. You ask yourself, does this feel good or does it feel strategic? They can't stand when you say grounded. That their confidence didn't hypnotize you, that their fake application didn't earn the access. Because you didn't hear it. You think, wow, what's your pace? You thought, what they not because you're sinful, because you're battery. It's the battery. It's the quiet slur. When the target needs to figure out, and you don't, you were flat, you were focused, you were desperate to be liked, you were committed to being accepted. And that's what they couldn't control. Because once you stop needing to be impressed, you become impossible to impress. And without your admiration, their influence has no power. Number 9, they hate you for exposing how fair your is. They hate you for being playable. You didn't buy any habits. You saw them through the image they spent so much time crafting. The persona built on control, charm, intimidation, or false humility. And when you didn't fall for it, they're entirely because manipulated don't actually have to be influenced. They survive on perception. More than substance. I can't stop having the performance side being fake. Your resistance exposed them, not by making you see, not by calling them out, by simply refusing to submit. And that's your people. Because when someone understands respect, suddenly loses your respect.
Oh, you ain't gonna do shit.
They start to ask questions. Why don't you follow me? Why do you keep your distance? Why do you see the door to the top? That quiet defiance disrupts their illusion. It makes people wonder what's really behind the curtain. That's what makes them furious. You didn't have to destroy their reputation. Your address is a little practical. Because the truth is, their influence was never based on leadership or authenticity. It was based on control, manipulation, and weaknesses. And when you didn't vote and show everyone that the emperor had some clothes, that their authority doesn't work, they will control the emotion. They're angry because you put it set. You didn't just walk away. You showed others it was possible to walk away too. And nothing's more dangerous to a manipulator than someone who shows people they don't have to love. You didn't just protect yourself, you disrupted their entire ecosystem of control. Now they have to work twice as hard to keep others in line because your freedom is contagious. Your sanity is a silent rebellion. You didn't need to expose them. Your refusal to participate was the extortion. And that's what they're afraid for. Because when someone builds their identity on the one person who sees it becomes the greatest threat of all. Even the beginning, and you don't lie, they just reflect. And what they saw in you, and others starting to see becomes living. Because we feel they will bring them. Number 10, you can't be guilt-tripped into self-betrayal. They hate that their favorite weapon, guilt, and weakness. That used to be their go-to move. Made you feel bad for their boundaries. Puts your empathy into obligation. Live a line between love and servitude. They knew that a good heart, and they used it against you. They convinced you that being nice meant saying yes with everything. sacrificing your needs, and putting yourself first. The doomsday is over, because now you know the difference between kindness and self-abandonment. You've outgrown their spiritual blackmail, the way they use your conscience to control you. They invest in manipulation. They call your resistance a crime. Your boundaries were labeled unforgiveness. If you stood your ground, they said you were being Christ-like, vicious, or humble. But deep down, you always felt something was off, because real love doesn't require you to betray yourself. Real relationships don't demand your silence or submission. They give peace. The truth is, they never expected your yes. They just expected it. And the one time you said no, they ended up holding trouble. Because for them, your yes was never about connection. It was about control. You saying yes kept them in power. You saying forced them to think.
Player one.
Bison wins!
Player
Round
1.
one. Fight! Round two. Fight! M. Bison wins!
Player
Round
1.
one. Fight! Round two. Fight! Final round. Fight! Bison wins!
Like one of my friends. Nah, I don't even want to do it, bro. Got me fucked up. You got me fucked up. I'm already paying $7 a month for that. You didn't give me like